Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, you're welcome. So in today's video we are going to learn how to cut Ankara joggers. So if this is something that interests you, kindly watch this video to the end. Make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube can recommend my video. So right here I have folded the fabric into two and I'm using the biggest part of my body measurement, which is my tie line. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do right now is to mark my elastic casing measurement of 2 inches. Okay, so right here I'm just trying to check my the measurements I have here, which I'm going to be using my tie measurement. Okay, so after that the next thing is to mark out our elastic casing of 2 inches. So I'm going to be marking 2 inches out. So after marking the 2 inches, the next thing I'm going to do now is to take our tie, our crouch line. Okay, the crouch line. Now before you take the crouch line, you need to mark the length of your trouser, and the length I'm using is 36 inches. Now I also added 2 inches extra, which is going to serve as the elastic casing for the lower part of the trouser. Okay, so the next thing now is to mark my crouch line, which I always use the quarter of my hip, and the quarter of my hip is 10 inches. So I'm going to mark the 10 inches. If you want ease, you can add half an inch to it. Okay, so from there, from that crouch line, I will mark 3 inches, which is going to serve as my tie line. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and mark the lines. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to determine to mark out the quarter of my hip, and you're going to be marking that on your crouch line up to your waistline, and then connect the lines together. So after connecting the lines together, we are going to determine our crouch extension. Now to determine the crouch extension, just divide that measurement you have at your crouch line, that place where we mark the quarter of our hip, divide it into 4. And what I have is 2.5. So whatever you have, you mark it out. So I'll be marking 2.5 out like this. So can you see? So the next thing is to determine the midpoint of our trouser, and we are going to be marking our crouch measurement. Okay, the overall crouch measurement, you divide it into 2 and you mark the midpoint from here to the length of your trouser. At the beginning, we want to shape the waist, you also mark it up to the waistline, but we don't need zipper or dart at the waist area. So I'll connect the midpoint together. So after connecting the midpoint together, we want to determine the measurements we need at the length of our trouser. Now I'm going to be using my hip, the quarter of my hip, for the measurement I need around this place. So the quarter of my hip is 10 inches, so I'm just going to minus 1 inch away from the quarter of my hip, and I'll have 9 inches. So that 9 inches, I'm going to divide it on both sides, which means I'll be placing 4.5 inches on both sides of the midpoint. If you don't want yours to be that big, you can remove up to 2 inches from the quarter of your hip. So I'll go ahead now and connect this line together, and our joggers is taking shape. You can use any other fabric aside from Ankara fabric. So I'm going to connect the other side as well. So after connecting the other side, on this corner where we have the crouch extension, you just go out by 1 inch. Okay, and then you go ahead and connect it together. So the front pattern is ready. All our allowance, we are going to be adding all our allowance to the back. Okay, so this is the easiest method to cut a trouser or joggers with elastic casing. Okay, but if you are making use of a zipper, I don't use this method. If I am to use zipper for this trouser, I don't make use of this method. Okay, so right here I'm just cutting this out, and I'm going to use this to cut out the front, the back as well. Okay, so this is my front here, this is my back here. I folded my back into 2 as well, so I added extra allowance to the back. Okay, so I'll just place the front to the back, making sure that the front is touching, the length of the front is also matching with the length of the back, and the side of the front is matching with the side of the back as well. So what I'm going to do right now is to mark out 2.5 inches on this crouch line. Okay, but before that we are going to mark our extension. So you are going to be using that 2.5 inch crouch extension at the back to give us the back extension. Okay, you mark that 2.5 inches at the waist at the back, and then you connect it back to the front waist, just as I'm doing right now. So once that is done, we are going to start marking 2 inches. So you mark 2.5 inches on this crouch line here, okay, and then you mark 2 inches on the rest of the lines. All right, you mark 2 inches on the rest of the lines here. So after doing that, you also come to this crouch area, which is the center of our trouser. You also mark 2 inches on this part as well. So after marking the 2 inches, you connect it back to that 2.5 inches you mark at the crouch line. Okay, you mark it and then connect everything together. So once you connect it together, our back pattern is ready as well. So when you are stitching this, you are going to be stitching this trouser on both sides by 1/2 inch, since 2 inches is what we use at the back. Okay, so you'll be stitching it with 1/2 inch on both sides. So right here is my trouser. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and sew the front. I'll bring the two fronts together. You sew the two fronts at the crouch area. Now the back as well, you sew the two back at the crouch area. Okay, so once I've done that, I'll bring it back for us to see what it looks like. Okay, is my pocket, and I'm using 8 inches by 8 inches for the pocket. So I'll just go ahead and curve it on one side. Okay, I'm placing the two together, the two pieces together. So I'll use this now to cut the other side of the pocket. So I'll go ahead and cut out the curve. So this is what I have. So I'll use this to cut out the other side of the pocket as well. So right here, I've gone ahead to join the front crouch together, as you can see, and I have done the same thing for the back as well. So I left this opening that will enable me to pass my elastic when I'm done joining. Now I have other videos on how to cut a trouser. Okay, now you can see how sharp this area is. So in one of the videos I made about trouser, I taught us how to slant the back in order to avoid having this sharp edge at the waist area at the back. Okay, so this particular method, I don't recommend this method of cutting a trouser if you are using a zipper, because if you are using this method and you are not slanting the back of your trouser is going to gape, that is going to open. It's not going to lay flat on your back. Okay, so when you are making a trouser with zipper, do not use this method. Okay, don't use this method. So right here, I'll just take my pocket and attach it to the side of the trouser. You need to mark out your elastic casing allowance first. So after marking it out, so from there you are going to sew your pocket on both sides at the front and also at the back. So after pinning them together, you go ahead and start joining both the front and back together. Then you also join it from the pocket as well. So right here, I've joined this together, and this is what I have. I've joined the pocket, I've joined the front and back together. All right, so I've joined it at the side as well. So the next thing is to go ahead and fold in our elastic casing. Okay, so after folding the elastic casing at the waist, I'll also fold in the elastic casing at the length of our trouser, and then you'll be leaving an opening here so that to enable you pass the elastic. So here I am, I've folded the elastic casing at the waist area, and I've done the same thing at the length of our trouser. So to get the length of your elastic, just minus 7 inches from your waist measurement. So whatever you have is going to be the length of your elastic. So I'll go ahead now and pass my elastic all around the waist. So for the lower part as well, whatever you have around your round trouser at the lower part, remove 1 inch from it, and the remaining is going to be the length of your elastic. Okay, so just go ahead and pass this around. All right, so after passing it around the waist, I will also use my pin to pin it down, and then pass the other elastic to the lower part of the trouser as well. So I'll go ahead now and pass it out. So after passing it out, I'll go ahead and close up the opening I left to enable me pass the elastic around. I'll also close up the back. So guys, my joggers is ready. You can see how beautiful this is looking like. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please consider to subscribe to my channel, like and share this video, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.